theme today, which is mixed use and the promotion of dynamic future living spaces and its role in that. We heard this morning a number of comments around mixed use from Knight Rank, for example, and mixed use being an emerging kind of approach to development, particularly in East Africa and in Kenya and Nairobi. We have 4 developers. I'm an architect, so I'm very intrigued to hear what they say about mixed use and the developments they are busy with and have been busy with. We've got developers doing mixed use and people doing residential developments within mixed use precincts and neighborhoods. Yesterday there was a bit of discussion around AI, so I decided to Google what AI would say about mixed use, and this is what it says. Mixed use development, or MUD, refers to urban developments that integrate multiple property uses and functions like residential, commercial, retail, hospitality, education, within a single location or building. This is not necessarily just talking about greenfield sites where you take a piece of land and develop a mixed-use precinct. It could also be a vertical distribution of functions within a building. It could also be regeneration of quarters or areas within a city. And I think that also takes various stakeholders and city planners to come together to make that kind of thing happen. So today we're going to talk about urbanization, inner city revitalization, and also greenfield mixed-use developments. Okay. I think the first question, I wanted to go to Rainier, if you don't mind. A question on emerging trends and how one starts to conceive of a mixed-use development. When it comes to dynamic future spaces and what drives the forces that drive the changes that are coming. We heard from the Gen Zs this morning. I think the Generation Alphas are our next target market. The Gen Zs are approaching their 30s and the Alphas are approaching their 20s. So they're a big factor of any long-term view you have on property in mixed use. So the question to you is, what emerging trends should developers and city planners be paying attention to when designing future living spaces?
Thanks, Peter. I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Rani. I'm the Executive Director at Talisi. And for those who don't know Talisi is a 400-acre mixed-use master plan development just outside Nairobi. So before I answer your question, I guess I've been working on Talisi from like the vision which we developed 10 years ago to now it coming together to being actually a mixed-use community. We have about 400 families living there at the moment, about 20 businesses. The school is up and running, and we have retail, hospitality, and we have recreational coming up and a hospital coming up. So just to give a context of what Talisi is. And I guess the emerging trends that you have to think about now for the future, I think the big one, which we all know, sustainability is non-negotiable, right? Everyone will look at it. And even when you're planning it 10 years ago, even if the community is not ready for it today, you have to be planned to know that you are going to have sustainability there in some way, some form. I'll just give an example. At Talisi today, we get water from boreholes and from a main line. But going forward, we have planned to make sure we can reuse water. We already reuse water for irrigation, but much more. You have to be planned for much more to be toilet to tap in the future. We have to be planned for that. So again, really looking at the future in terms of sustainability. The other, if you have a blank piece of paper, technology is also non-negotiable. Make sure that you're ready for any tech. And finally, particularly for mixed use, is flexibility. And when you're approaching a master plan and understanding the mix of uses is kind of a guess at the beginning, because you actually are doing your best guess on what the market wants, what the terrain, in the case of Tbilisi, can actually put together. And then you have to mix it all up and allow the flexibility to make sure that you can change as the market moves. In these 10 years, we've had COVID, we've had various other regulations, and I think the biggest challenge we've had is that the county governments don't walk that journey with you. So they don't really understand when I say, I don't want to set back here. I want to have, I don't know, an office building which flows into a recreational, and I don't want to set back here. They have not moved with the market. So I guess as emerging trends, always think flexibility, and for sure sustainability in technology is a given.
Thank you. I think you were singled out by Carolyn earlier, was alongside Tatu, as an example of why it's important to have a master plan. And I think in terms of the long-term sustainability, the economic sustainability of your developments, it's important to have that framework in place so you can adapt to market forces as they come through. Thank you very much. Peter, we're flanked by Peters here. Just tell us a little about yourself and just answer this question, which is what are the lessons that can be drawn from recent mixed-use projects across the region regarding phasing, financing, and market absorption?
Thank you, Peter. I'm Peter Mayavi. I've newly joined Centum Real Estate as the Chief Capital and Development Officer. Many of you here know my background. I was with the IHS before, which is International Housing Solutions. My former co-MD somewhere here. Where's Kioi? Who is also buying into mixed-use developments, by the way. Kioi is already at Tbilisi. He's at Tatu. So it just goes to show that there's no way you can ignore, mixed-use developments. So I'll talk a bit about Centum, and maybe also to just jump into what to augment what Renee was saying. The thing about mixed-use developments is these usually are dreams. Many times when they begin, people don't even understand or what the dream would be, how it would turn out, how that master plan would pan out. When Tatu began, people thought Steve Jennings was a mad person. When they started selling Kijani, I'm sure when Jason and John bought the land for Unity Homes, no one believed the dream. But right now, these dreams are now, they're coming to fruition. They have reached takeoff. And Centum, as a mixed-use developer, is standing on the shoulders of such dreams. Centum itself at Two Rivers was actually a conception of the late Dr. Kirubi and James Moria. And at that time, when we set out to develop the largest mall in East and Central Africa, again, also it was ahead of its time. But right now, we are seeing that is now also coming into its own. The master plan, as you're talking about master planning, has had to evolve as well. Because originally, Centum was set up as an alternative economic zone. It was mainly zoned for offices. But now we've had to change that master plan to include a lot of housing, because we are seeing that that's where the trend is going. And we are offering an integrated city that has both, between affordable, so, below $20,000, let's say about $30,000 a unit, all the way to, the loft, which the last units, sold for about, $500,000. And those are the kind of, the offerings that we have in this mixed-use development. But other than that, we are offering, the retail experience. We are offering, as Renee was talking about, sustainability. We have the largest, probably, mall installed solar solar generation. We are about 2 megawatts just from our roofs only, 2 megawatts in generation. We recycle all our water. All our sewage is recycled. We provide water to the community in Githogoro as well. We are IFC EDGE champions. I think we have 1,940 units certified for EDGE. So last year in 2024, we were IFC EDGE champions for Africa. So that's the kind of sustainability conversations we're having. And not just at Two Rivers, because Two Rivers is actually one of our smaller developments. If you think about in terms of land area, the ARF area. Two Rivers only 106 acres. At Vipingo, we bought 10,000 acres, which we've exited about 2,000, we retain 8,000, and we are in the process of also rolling that out in terms of housing. We've done Palm Ridge units, about almost 600 units, another 1,500 are in the pipeline. We've done Awali, about 74 sort of mid-end bungalows, another maybe 300 are in the pipeline. We've also gone regional. We're in Uganda. We have Palm Marina, which is a 360-acre development at the peninsula between Entebbe and Kampala. Talking about government, when Uganda did the expressway from Entebbe to Kampala, that really helped us with Palm Marina. And Palm Marina, we've developed about 42 acres. We have 320 to go. We are now open to co-development. We need to partner with, a hospitality developer, a hospital developer, a school, and a retail developer. So we are very, alive to the trends you're talking about. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Peter. I think there's an audience here who maybe can answer some of those requests to help you with hospitality education and so to co-develop with you. And I think we had a chat yesterday about bringing dreams to life, and I think it's important that all these mixed-use precincts and new ideas have some vision and a sense of what type of place you're trying to create, so you can bring that to life and try to distribute that dream and get people to buy into that dream with you. Bobby, along a similar line, a question for you, which is, does current access to finance promote one form of development versus another, and does this slow development of critical need assets?
Thanks for the question. My name is Bobby. I am the Managing Director and Head of Real Estate Investing on behalf of Cross Boundary Group. We are an underserved markets investment firm focusing on investing globally with a focus on sector, that's energy. That's not what brings me here today, but secondly, real estate. In real estate, we are developers, with our first project being here in Kenya. We've focused our time on really trying to understand what's needed for the market here in Kenya, but then broadly East Africa, and then even further on to Africa as a continent. And the answer to that question, I think, is pretty simple. And I think the previous panel sort of echoed the previous presentation echoed my sentiment today. But the panel itself, as they were talking about mortgages and access to finance from a build-to-sell perspective, from a buyer perspective, it's clear. I think Kenya specifically is doing a lot. I think the country has moved leaps and bounds relative to where it was 5 years ago, with I think 22,000 mortgages at that period of time. I think it sounds like we're hitting 30 already, and the messaging is clear. The government is well in support of providing access to finance for those buyers of homes that want to buy to live in the home. The reality is I think there has been a lack of support for those developers like ourselves that are building to rent. And the reason that I think that that's the case is, we struggle with a challenge, and that is the vast majority of the funds available to commercial banks are actually from depositors, which means that those are short-term funds. Whereas in developed markets, typically access to finance has been extended through government programs, and those government programs promote long-term financing solutions. So for developers that are developing build-to-rent facilities, we have faced challenges in receiving or being able to access long-term patient capital to be able to finance our developments. We end up financing with pure equity. We do so because we don't like taking significant risk and believe that actually that risk can be layered on at a period of time once you've re-stabilized occupancy. And I know that's the dream for any sort of commercial bank to finance a project like that, and we're making those dreams come true for the commercial financiers. But having said that, it's not the ideal structure. So loan tenors are, as we know, as the other developers in this room, are too short to support build-to-rent facilities. Interest rates, and this isn't news to anybody in Africa broadly, but interest rates are too high. And the big sort of elephant in the room that nobody typically talks about is security packages that banks typically look for are too strenuous on the developers themselves. People don't typically sort of project finance developments, whereas in developed markets that are focused on build-to-rent schemes, people do project finance and take less security in order to get those projects off the ground.
Thank you, Bobby. Just in the same theme with various challenges, just want to get to Jason. Talk about the challenges you face as a residential developer and your experience of developing in a greenfield mixed-use development. What are the positives and what are the challenges you experience?
Yes, so just by way of introduction, my name is Jason Horsey. I'm Executive Director of Unity Homes. We're a pure-play residential developer. We did our first project in Eldoret, after which we moved to Tartu City in 2018 and started developing there in 2019. We have now handed over 2 complete estates in Tartu, with a total of about 1,400 homes handed over in Tartu, and we are also developing in Alaro City in Nigeria, which is also another Endeavour project. So we've got, as I said, we're residential developers, sort of tangential experience in the mixed-use space just by virtue of our experience with Tartu and Alaro. I mean, our experience has been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, I'd say our business is, since moving to Tartu, has been really transformational, our business. There's, as a housing developer dealing with a mixed-use developer, there's obviously a lot of symbiosis between our 2 businesses, because residential is a fundamental pillar of any mixed-use development. So there's like a joint marketing and sales effort, which has ultimately been a huge driver of our success. You know, we're both, as opposed to a traditional land transaction, you've now got the land developer also pushing the sales because it's beneficial to their business. You know, if I look back when we first got to Tartu, as I said, we bought in 2018. It was largely an industrial site. You know, there was a few warehouses, there was doormans, but it definitely wasn't a city. So we've now brought, as I said, a few thousand people into their city. We have a vibrant community operating within their city, and without the residential, it is pretty much just an industrial park. So it's been really wonderful for us to see that growth in Tartu City, and it's been enormously beneficial to our business. Another big advantage of operating in development like that is the plug-and-play nature. You know, we're a little bit insulated from the issues that you have outside. We're not dealing with KPLC. You know, the utilities are really world-class. You know, like there's some of that traditional developer issues are not handled by us. It's actually handled by Tartu City, so it makes it much easier for us. And then on the sales side, I mean, being in a mixed use or controlled developments is a real selling point for our people, for our clients. You know, like obviously I'm sure everyone will have heard of the 40-kilometer-hour, somewhat seemingly draconian speed limits in Tartu City, but in the end of the day, they proclaim to be the safest city in Africa, and that's really what our clients want. They want a good place for a good home, and a really safe place for their children, and we really have that in spades in Tartu. In terms of challenges, I think the only real challenge, we're sort of a victim of our own success or a victim of Tartu's success, is the land price has appreciated significantly since we first got there. Now, we've obviously ridden some of that capital appreciation wave, but subsequent land purchases, you are relinquishing some of that margin that we feel that we could capture elsewhere. Operating within Tartu City is also quite expensive. They are providing a world-class service, but it comes with a significant cost to operate there. So the land price and any operating cost, development fees, service charge is very expensive to operate there. But certainly on balance, we're extremely happy operating within Tartu City. It's been really, really beneficial to our business.
It's great to hear. Good problem to be a victim of your own success, I think.
Well, they're a victim of their success.
Victim of their success. Okay, I was at a HIF conference a year or two ago, and they talked about by 2050, 1/3 of all people on the planet will be African. And it talks to the growth and the population growth in Africa and what we need to do with our cities to grow and to match that growth and deal with the needs of the people. So while we're talking about urban and cities, just to Bobby, what role can developers play to ensure the cities are inclusive across all age bands in support of dynamism?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. We've really focused our time on trying to understand how we can make the biggest impact on the population that we serve, and so a lot of people view our brand, which is Mosaic, as a student housing brand. We're not a student housing brand at all. And I think a lot of people think that any young person is just a student, and that really is not the case. The reality is that as we saw sort of June of last year on the streets, that the vast majority of the population is actually the youth. It's everyone below the age of 35, which is 70% of our population. That's who we focus on. So the age band that we cater to is everyone between the age of 22 to 35. What we do to cater to those that sort of age band is to provide developments or facilities, mainly residential, that focuses its time and its design on making life easy in an urban setting. So we cater to the urban youth. And the way we do that is by creating room typologies that are extremely efficient, that are very comfortable, that are seamless, not only in design but in operations, so that the urban youth can function, learn, and flourish in a professional environment, which is the city. The reality is, as we know, the vast majority of the jobs are in Nairobi. And so 70% of the population across the country are trying to get here. And they're going to continue to do so. But there isn't sufficient housing to be able to cater to them. So from an affordability perspective, we find a lot of developers are focusing outside of Nairobi. We're focused within Nairobi and the expensive parts of Nairobi. And these parts are expensive because they are well located, and that's actually where the jobs are. So that's where there's demand. So creating affordable spaces for the mass of the mass of the population is not an easy task, but we feel we're up to it because what we incorporate in the design of our buildings just cater to that demographic, which is the youth. I'll mention a few sort of asset types that we bring into our developments that are mainly residential to try and describe or to help you understand what makes these developments seamless to the ultimate beneficiary, which is our tenants. Laundry services, so young people don't like to wash clothes. I mean, it's pretty simple. They like clean clothes, but they don't like the activity of having to wash them. So we bring in laundry services and laundry sort of operators to be able to provide that service to them. Banking, so M-Pesa agents as opposed to a full-service bank. Those facilities just need a small space, and it's high yielding because it's a small space. But it's good space, and they can provide that banking service to our tenants. Hair salons, the youth spend a lot of time on self-care. So hair salons, nail salons, that sort of thing really actually draws in tenants and also makes life a lot easier for people to function on a sort of a tight timeline with their day. Pharmacies, so healthcare, providing that service through a pharmacy as well as sort of an on-site small clinic with a practitioner that shows up at a specific time every week is something really beneficial. We are catering to the youth that ultimately cannot afford a car, but they may be able to afford a motorcycle, and so having operators or providers of motorbike charging stations, as you can see on the roads in Nairobi, there's a lot of motorcycles that are moving towards electric, and therefore having those facilities for a fee on site is beneficial to those tenants that can afford mobility in the form of a motorcycle as opposed to a car. And then lastly, quick service restaurants. The youth don't really have time to be cooking their own meals or a full meal, and so having quick service restaurants on site to provide that somewhat informal form of getting nutrition is important, and we can do so just by providing space for a quick service restaurant to be on site.
Thank you, Bobby. I see we've got just under 3 minutes left, so we did request an hour for this, but we're going to have to close out in a few minutes. But in the interest of time, I'm going to move to Peter. In terms of sustainability and the long-term relevance of mixed-use precincts, what key factors contribute to the long-term success and sustainability of mixed-use communities, especially in rapidly urbanizing regions?
Okay. First, Bobby, thank you for bringing Rolexes to your developments. The Ugandans will know what Rolex means. For Kenyans, it's a smocha or something. That's what you're saying, right? Anyway, for sustainability, I think what trends we're seeing, first of all, people are very health conscious, for instance. So for any mixed-use development, the integration with health facilities becomes very important. For us, for instance, at Two Rivers, we have a whole sort of precinct for sports. We have a jogging track, and I think that's something running as well at Tilisi. So these health facilities, things like gyms, maybe like stationary gyms, for instance, this can become very important in making sure that you attract and retain people in the precinct. As well, having a retail experience, as Bobby is trying to say, people who don't want to go far to shop, people don't want to go far to have meetings, people don't want to go far to work, so it's a live, work, and play more or less at a walking distance. As Graham Reed will say, 15 minutes to every single thing that you need. So if you're within 15 minutes, either walking or a driving distance, then you're actually catered for. And as well as in, so social amenities, so schools, work, and health facilities, then you're set. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We're running out of time, but I've got one more question for Rania, and then also one for Jason. So Rania, in terms of master planning infrastructure, I know we chatted earlier about when you embark on a mixed-use scheme, how do you know how much of this and how much of that to put into it? And the answer is it's your best guess, informed by a lot of experts. So how can strong infrastructure planning support the long-term success of mixed-use communities?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I mean, infrastructure really underpins all master plan mixed-use developments. It's the most important thing to get right. I can't stress it enough. At Tilisi, it is a little bit of a best guess, but that investment in infrastructure is the biggest capital investment and the one that needs the most patient capital. And Tilisi those type of developments like Talisia and Tartu, the actual amount of capital and the amount of money that goes into infrastructure, which actually is the reason why they are successful, is that you've invested in good spec infrastructure, which can be flexible depending on how your mixed use pans out. You're actually building infrastructure to support the population, not overdo it. And that is it's really hard for people who are putting in the money to put in the infrastructure to say, no, you can't go above 5 floors, or you can't have that kind of population. So I think it's really important. And finally, I think for mixed-use master plan cities, just to make sure that it goes into perpetuity, these cities last forever, the maintenance program for that infrastructure has to be set up on the outset. And that's why, Jason, your high service charges. Because I think if you can't do that, then you're basically building cities just for a short time.
Okay, coming to Jason then. Last question, I think. We've got one last question. In terms of infrastructure, I think one key aspect of infrastructure is green infrastructure. And we've got a really interesting question about the fact you can't really monetize green space, but it's very key because it takes up probably 60% of your land at the end of the day when it comes to actual footprint development. So what is the importance and difficulty of providing sufficient green space in our developments, given that it's difficult to directly monetize green spaces?
Yeah, no, thanks. It's obviously, you're, particularly when the land price is high, you're sort of fighting for square meters within the development because we're only selling the floor space. So it's always a bit of a trade-off, but it's a really fundamental part of our business. And luckily also, and I know you guys probably have a lot of dedicated green space, also Tartu City. So we've actually co-developed with Tartu City a 40-acre park. We invested about $400,000. Now that's obviously $400,000 that we cannot sell. But this has got walking trails, picnic spots, there's a football pitch, basketball courts, and all of these things are just hugely value accretive to our clients. If you look at the next development, which is actually just about to break ground on another development, it's actually going to border an animal sanctuary. So Tartu City is setting up a sanctuary and will be on the border of that. Within that development itself, 30% of the land is dedicated to green space. And as I said to you, the land in Tartu City is very expensive, but the value addition to our clients actually outweighs the potential loss of putting real estate on there. And it's not even just on the sales side, it's also on the rental side. Once we've sold these units, the renter is not necessarily it's not our responsibility, but we need to make sure that our estates are full. And one way to do that is providing good green space and really nice amenities. And ultimately, we always sort of nitpick and agonize about the tiny chip on a tile, and we're extremely pedantic about the quality. But really, ultimately, what our clients want is amenities, and really nice green space forms part of that narrative.
100%. It's part of that dream you sell, part of that lifestyle you're selling. Even though you don't directly sell it, it's not part of your GLA, but it is key to what people are buying into. Thank you very much. Thank you for the extra few minutes, and thank you, the delegates. Thank you.